President of North America, and Fredrik Johansson, Chief Financial Officer. So if you turn to page 3. So as you're all aware, the last quarter, Calliditas, so actually the Q4, I would say, achieved a historic milestone in our history. We had our first commercial product approved in the U.S., and it was the first time that the cardiorenal division of the FDA gave an accelerated approval in a renal indication based on a surrogate marker of reduction of proteinuria. And also this became the first approved product for this rare indication. And I would say due to excellent internal collaboration, commercial product was available very quickly. And we were in a position to ship commercial product already in late January, taking into account that we had obviously Christmas and New Year holidays in between. And so the result from the first 2 months of commercial activity is 1.9 million of net sales in terms of Tarpeyo. And we believe that this reflects an excellent start to our commercial launch. And we are very encouraged by the strong level of interest and engagement that we're seeing. And Andy will provide you with some more details regarding this later on in the presentation. If you turn to page 4. So just a reminder of some of the backdrop of the IgA nephropathy market. As I mentioned, this is a rare disease with around 50% of those patients diagnosed continuing to be at risk of progressing towards end-stage renal disease, which means dialysis and transplantation, despite receiving optimized supportive care. In terms of the prevalence of this rare disease, we've estimated to be about 130,000 to 150,000 patients in the U.S., and therefore this results in kind of this core market of 65,000 to 75,000 patients taking this progression rate or risk rate into account. It is extremely well established supportive care paradigm, and according to Spherix research, about 50% of patients are already on RAS blockade. That means blood pressure lowering agents. So this is the supportive care by the time that they get to a nephrologist. And these specialists then ensure that these patients are on optimized care by providing individual dose titration based on the specific patient characteristics and needs. We also know that there is a clear correlation between higher levels of proteinuria in this patient population and the rate of disease progression. And so we do know that patients with higher levels of UPCR have a worse prognosis and outlook. And we therefore believe that physicians might be especially focused on these patients which then might have seen a decline in eGFR already and may be experiencing more rapid disease progression. And again, finally, obviously, nothing's ever been approved in this indication previously. There is no CD10 code available, and so obviously this is a market that is in development. So we turn to page 5. Other things that happened in this quarter, we also saw the expansion of the in-licensing agreement we have with Everest Medicines to include South Korea. This resulted in a $3 million upfront payment. We're also very excited about the upcoming regulatory filing in China in the second half of this year, with the potential approval and commercialization taking place, therefore, already next year, obviously subject to positive approval. We also in this quarter saw the first patient dosed in the pivotal PBC trial Transform, which was initiated at the end of last year. And we're looking to enroll 99 patients in total in this global trial across up to 150 sites and plan to conduct a futility study in 2023 when the 99th patient has received 24 weeks of treatment. We turn to page 6, some of the post-period events. So in the publicly available CHMP agenda for May, Calliditas is listed as up for an opinion for conditional approval of Nefecon in Europe. And so we expect to receive notification of the outcome of the CHMP discussions after the conclusion of this session. Subject to receiving a positive opinion, an approval and issuing marketing authorization, which then would be taken by the European Commission, we would expect to then see that in Q3. As for previous communications, STADA is our European commercial partner, and as such, it's responsible for the commercial launch and related activities in Europe. As previously mentioned, obviously, we continue post kind of period to see positive trends in development from our U.S. commercial activities, as well as the continuation of P&T committee meetings, and we have a positive outlook on the continued commercial success of Tarpeyo in the U.S., though we're still obviously at a very early stage of our launch. Regarding setanaxib, we also announced yesterday that we now have also dosed the first patient in our phase 2 proof of concept trial in head and neck cancer, and we look forward to continuing enrollment with a target of providing biomarker data an interim basis before the end of this year. And just to remind you, this is a placebo-controlled phase 2 trial, which is targeted to read out next year. And related to this, we're actually excited that research articles related to setanaxib's effect of CAF, or cancer-associated fibroblasts, was part of the illustrious group of most cited articles from the American Association of Cancer Research Journals in 21-22. And with that summary, I'm going to hand over to Andrew Udell, our President of North America, who will take you through some more details regarding our commercial activities this quarter.
Thanks, Renee. So on slide 7, I'm excited to share with you our progress on the U.S. commercialization and launch of Tarpeyo. Let's go to the next slide, slide 8. As a reminder, the U.S. represents a large market with a substantial unmet medical need. Disease prevalence for IgA nephropathy is estimated between 130 and 150,000, with over 50% of the patients progressing to end-stage renal disease. Prior to the launch of Tarpeyo, a large survey of nephrologists estimated 65% of their IgA nephropathy patients are likely to progress to dialysis. And as Renee stated earlier, we estimate our core market to be between 65 and 75,000 patients. In addition to the size of the market, end-stage renal disease, which includes dialysis and transplantation, is extremely debilitating and costly, costing hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient per year. As a result, you can imagine, prior to the launch of Tarpeyo, in a survey of 188 nephrologists, the majority indicated the feeling that no or few treatment options were effective for these patients. Next slide, please. Calliditas has been preparing for the approval and launch of Tarpeyo for a few years. We were ready to hit the ground running once gaining FDA approval in December. Our commercial leadership team has extensive, relevant, and successful launch experience. In addition to our in-house team, we have partnered with the industry's top companies, consultants, and agencies to ensure robust, efficient, and impactful launch for our first-in-class product. Our sales force was onboarded, trained, and deployed prior to the end of January, just 5 weeks after approval. And not only did these representatives come to us as veterans of rare disease and specialty sales, but the majority joined us with nephrology market relationships and experience. In addition, our market access team of national account managers were in the field prior to our approval, and as you'll hear in a bit, have done an outstanding job working with the largest payers. Next slide, slide 10, please. At approval, we launched our white glove, full-service patient and provider support program called Tarpeyo Touchpoints. The full-time, dedicated care navigators and designated rare pod team has been essential and successful with patient communication and navigation of benefits investigation and verification process. In addition, the integrated hub and specialty pharmacy model at Biologics has been able to ensure that all appropriate financial assistance programs are applied for the appropriate patients. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, we were FDA approved on December 15th and announced our first sale and prescription filled near the end of January. After only 2 full months into our launch, independent from our marketing and digital programs, our sales force has directly contacted or reached over 4,000 nephrologists. At the end of March, we had attained 134 unique patient enrollments, and the patient enrollment includes a physician-written prescription and an enrollment form to our hub. And these came from 111 unique prescribers. And as Renee stated earlier, our net sales for Q1 was $1.9 million US. As we are now in mid-May, I can say that our enrollments and number of unique prescribers continue to grow at an accelerated rate. And I should note that all this has occurred prior to the very recent initiation of a branded promotional campaign, which required pre-approval by the FDA prior to launching. Market research and early feedback of this promotional campaign and program has us very encouraged on the impact this will have. Next slide, please. So how have we done on the market access front? As is common for most all launches, health plans take on average around 6 to 9 months to review a new product for coverage and formulary placement. As of our first 4 months, we are pleased to report that several key targeted large accounts, including Cigna, Express Scripts, and Humana, began covering Tarpeyo on their predominant formularies. In addition, Tarpeyo is covered by Medicare Part D and Medicaid patients with a mandatory coverage date of April 1st. We estimate at the end of April, over 50% of all U.S. lives have coverage for Tarpeyo. While we are certainly pleased with our progress, I need to stress that prior to payers establishing coverage policies, the medical exception process still enables appropriately deemed patients access to Tarpeyo. And as mentioned, our patient services program, Tarpeyo Touchpoints, helps navigate the process for patients and physicians. And really impressive, as a result, to date, only one enrolled patient in our program has canceled due to a payer and coverage issue. Next slide, please. Since our launch, we remained impressed and encouraged with the inbound inquiries, patient awareness, and enthusiasm that has been expressed on social media and through the patient advocacy groups. This is an extremely motivated and dialed-in patient audience that has thirsted for a treatment specifically designed for this rare disease. Next slide, please. So in summary, during this initial period, we remain extremely pleased with our results and progress. I am confident we have the right team of launch experts in place that have and will continue to execute our plan. The positive trajectory and trends, coupled with the recent launch of our branding campaign, has us enthusiastic and encouraged. I would now like to turn it over to Frederick to review our financials, beginning on slide 15.
Thank you, Andy, and good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I will now present to you the financial overview for the first quarter of 2022, and all numbers presented to you are in million SEK. To start with, we present 49.7 million in net revenues for the period. For the same period last year, we did not report any revenues. This is the first quarter we report net product sales following the Tarpeyo FDA accelerated approval in December last year. And out of the 49.7 million in net revenue, we are proud to present that net product sales from Tarpeyo in the quarter amounted to 18.0 million. During the quarter, we also received an upfront fee from Everest of 28.8 million, which is approximately $3 million, for the extension of the Everest license contract to South Korea. Our total operating expenses for the period amounted to 257.5 million compared to 150.8 million for the same period last year. Out of the total operating expenses, marketing and selling expenses increased by 74.5 million to 93.9 million compared to 19.4 million for the same period last year. Increase in marketing and selling expenses originates from us having a full commercial team in place from the start of Q1 this year, including our sales force, compared to the same period last year, when we were early in our journey building up our commercial capabilities. The cost for research and development increased by 23.2 million to 113.3 million compared to 19.1 million for the same period previous year. The increase in R&D expenses originates primarily from the preparations for the set and exceed and ongoing operations, I should say, for the set and exceed trials, where we just randomized the first patients in the head and neck trial earlier this week. And now we have the two set and exceed trials fully up and running. The administration expenses amounted to 48.5 million for the period, to be compared with 39.4 million for the same period last year. The increase of 9.1 million between the periods was primarily related to a general cost increase for administration due to the organization growth and increased complexity being a company in commercial stage. This leaves us with an operating loss of 208.4 million for this period compared to an operating loss of 150.8 for the same period last year. The cash flow used in operating activities for the period amounted to 191.4 million compared to 134.2 million for the same period last year. The cash flow from financing activities for the period was 60.1 million, and this is mainly related to the exercise of the Work Program 2018-2022 at the end of the quarter. As of March 31, we continue to report a strong cash position of 825.4 million, down from 955.5 million in the end of December. In addition to our cash, we have $50 million remaining unused in the Korea's credit facility, where the second tranche of $25 million can be drawn down up until June this year, and additional $25 million up until December this year. The successful start out of the gates of the commercial launch of Tarpeyo continue to support our view that based on our current operation plan, our current cash position, and the amounts available under our loan facility, we believe we have sufficient funds for our planned operations and capital expenditures until we become cash flow positive, which currently is projected for the first half of 2023, subject to continued successful commercialization of Tarpeyo. That was all for me, and now back to you, Renee.
Thank you very much. So we're excited, as you can hear, about the start of our commercial launch and believe that we're very well positioned to see continued approvals and commercial success, complemented by exciting data from our pipeline over the next 12 months as we continue to execute on our plan, which we have consistently done over the years. And so with that, let's open it up for any questions from anyone online.
Thank you. And if you do wish to ask a question, please press 01 on your telephone keypad. If you wish to withdraw your question, you may do so by pressing 02 to cancel. Our first question comes from the line of Yigal Nochomovitz from Citi. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Carly on for Yigal. Thank you for taking our questions. We have two. First, can you help characterize the initial patients where TARPEYO is being used? Should we assume nephrologists are largely adhering to the 1.5 UPCR cutoff suggested in the label, and any other criteria docs are using to determine whether to try TARPEYO in a particular patient? And then the second question is on the competitive landscape. I guess, can you talk about how you intend to position TARPEYO relative to sparsentan, given that drug could be entering the market potentially by the end of this year? Thank you.
Thanks. So I guess just a clarification, I will have Andy cover me, but there's actually not a cutoff of 1.5 in the label. It actually says generally, and so I think there is actually, it's left up to really the physician to kind of look at what rapidly progressing at risk of replicants might mean. But Andy, why don't you take the answer to the first question, and I will address the second one.
Sure. I really can't give you specifics other than, as Renee said, there's a guide, there's an indication, and the physicians have patients that they see that they feel are immediately appropriate. I don't have the specific lab data for these patients, but I can tell you that, once again, the uptake has been quick for many, many different physicians, nephrologists. They have these patients in mind when they see them, and they are getting enrolled. And as I said earlier, they're not being kicked out or canceling due to payer restrictions by any means. So that's all I can really say about these initial patients.
And so with regards to your second question, with regards to sparsentan, I think in order to kind of, in any intelligent way, answer that question, I think we would need to see some data from that, from that trial. Obviously, that would include, some EGFR data. It would include, obviously, what concomitant medications were given, because obviously immunosuppression was allowed in that trial. Also, I think, this is obviously a drug that has a fixed kind of combination of kind of RAS blockade. And so, again, it would actually kind of mean that physicians would have to really change the way that they are doing things today. And so I think that we really need all of those things to get a better understanding of how that would impact the market. Again, personally, this is a market that, really has had no kind of, approved drugs for a very long period of time. My assumption is that there was never anyone who thought that there would only be one drug that would be approved in this indication forever. And I think that there's a lot of room, again, depending on the profile, the label, the data, on what actual kind of patient population may or may not be approved under approval, accelerated approval. But taking all of that into account, I certainly think that there is, as we've seen in many other rare indications, that there's certainly room for 2 and even 3, different, approaches. And again, ours is more kind of targeted and local at the actual origin of the disease. Other ones might be more systemic. So there might be benefits and drawbacks, combinations that would be very valuable for physicians to use. But again, before we actually have some idea of some of these things, it's difficult to be, any more specific than that.
Okay, got it. That's helpful. Thank you so much.
And the next question comes from the line of Maury Raycroft from Jefferies. Please go ahead.
Hi, congrats on the progress, and thanks for taking my questions. Just wondering if you're providing any specifics on sales or launch expectations for the rest of 2022, and what can you say about what you're seeing in April and early May so far on the backdrop of COVID dynamics?
So in terms of kind of guidance, I think actually, this is not really sufficient. We don't really have enough data because, again, we can't really rely on other products out there or CD10 codes or anything else to really predict. So I think what we want to do is we want to be pragmatic and we want to give some guidance that actually kind of would make some sense. And so from that perspective, hard to do, but Frederick, please go ahead and give your view on what we can and can't do from a guidance perspective.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure, as Renee's saying, that our guidance is useful, and therefore I think we need additional months under the belt, seeing the trends. So hopefully we may be possible to give guidance after the second quarter, subject to we see clear trends. But we have to take that as we go.
Got it. Makes sense. And just a quick question for I guess following up on that, for COVID dynamics, what kind of an impact is that having on the launch so far?
Sure. Andy, do you want to take that?
Sure. I mean, we launched in the beginning part of this year, so the environment's been generally stable and consistent since we launched. But I think we've discussed before, and obviously the results are the results. We feel that we're doing very well. But as we've discussed before, we hired a very experienced sales force, and a lot of them have already been in this nephrology space, the majority of them. And so we really have gotten access. There's a lot of interest. And the uptake, as you could see, by so many unique prescribers, they understand the concept. It's not a long, process for them to understand the benefits of the product. So we really haven't. It's hard to comment exactly on the future, but so far to date, we're very pleased with how it's gone.
Got it. Okay, maybe just a quick question for the 134 patients enrolled. Do these include any patients who completed Part B of the Phase 3 study? I guess those patients leave the study and then go on to commercial drug.
Actually, I don't. We wouldn't have that information because we wouldn't actually know, who the patients are that, were part of the trial. We don't have access to that information. So actually, we're not in a position to know that.
Okay, understood. Thanks for taking my questions. I'll hop back in the queue.
Thanks.
The next question comes from the line of Annabelle Samimy from Stifel. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question, and congratulations on the good start. I'm just curious to know how physicians right now are responding to any of the PA requirements. Are you finding that the steps being put in place are particularly onerous, especially for those payers that you haven't contracted with yet? And I know that you mentioned that physicians aren't necessarily seeing the 1.5 UPCR as a cutoff, but are payers using that as any kind of, restriction for any of these patients for coverage?
Andy, do you want to take that?
Sure. So I just want to comment on one thing. You said plans that we haven't contracted with yet. We're not rebating, so we're not contracting really with any plans. So it's just them making a P&T decision. But look, TARPEYO is being managed by commercial payers in a similar way to other specialty medicines, and this is as expected. They include, their management includes, typically it has to be written by a specialist, on-label use, quantity limits, and sometimes prior concomitant treatment. So we haven't seen any real surprises there, number one. Number two is, yes, some are going to require the limits of EGFR, proteinuria. They base it on phase 3 trial criteria and things of that nature as well. But the easiest thing to say to folks is that people enroll in our program, and the physicians are held with this white glove service with our hub. They're the liaise, these case managers between the patient, the physician, and the payer, so they can get them through this process. And we haven't been receiving any negative feedback or people dropping out of the program due to payer management. So far, we've been very encouraged, and it's all been kind of expected, and that is typical for all products, all specialty products, I should say.
Okay, got it. And if I could just follow up with some of the feedback that you're getting from the field, I know it's too early to say whether patients are responding to the drug, but have you been hearing anything from the field whether patients are finding the drug to be more tolerable than what they've had in the past? So is TARPEYO behaving from a tolerability perspective as we would have hoped for? Do you have any feedback from that perspective?
Yeah. Andy?
The answer is no feedback. I mean, once again, it's really early, and everything's been encouraging, positive. We listen on social media, and we haven't heard anything negative as far as that's concerned. So far, so good.
Okay, and then if I can ask one more question, you mentioned that there's only been one rejection so far. Do you have a sense of what the timing is for most patients to be ushered through the process? How is Tarpeo Touchpoints compressing that time, and is it happening more rapidly than you would have expected?
So I can answer that. We monitor every single thing, and the answer is yes. It's been improving and will improve. We have metrics and things that we shoot for. I think it's as expected. Remember how this disease is not so. Oftentimes it's very variable, and so the patients, as long as there's good communication between patient and physician, they're in the queue and they will get their prescription. It can be variable at this beginning stage, especially for the plans and how they're managing this. And so until you get your stride and understand exactly how each specific plan manages it, the time it just only gets shorter, but until you learn those management techniques.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
The next question comes from the line of Rami Katura from LifeSci Capital. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, congrats on the progress and thanks for taking my questions as well. Two quick ones for me. I know it's early, but given that Tarpeo is kind of the first approved therapy for IgAN, do you expect the bolus of patients early on or a more consistent growth of enrollment forms over time?
Andy, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think the answer is there's really been no bolus. I think we're judging it as, remember, these patients go to see their physician 3 times, 4 times a year. And it's at that point that they're being assessed on their progress, their decline in kidney function, their EGFR and proteinuria. And it's at this point that they make changes to their prescriptions and their treatment. And so I think that the biggest takeaway that you should get from this is that there's so many unique prescribers that the adoption is quick. Okay, it's not like that they're calling up everyone in their database and their practice and getting them to run in for a prescription. It's during the cycle they've immediately adopted and understand where this product fits and how it benefits the patients.
Got it. And then since IgAN patients are generally younger, do you guys have any estimates on what % of the patient population is covered under commercial plans versus Medicare?
The only thing I could say to that is the market, that it's too early to give any, real sense of anything. And we just know from overall market data, syndicated data before we were, available, that it's in the 65 to low 70s as commercial. So I would assume that the trend would be the same, since that's the overall population mix.
Makes a lot of sense. Thank you, guys.
Next question comes from the line of Dan Actually from Pareto Securities. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking my questions and congratulations for the impressive start. Just one small question is on the FTEs you have currently on the sales force, and if you plan to expand that, and if we should look forward to any specific marketing campaigns, promotions that you have planned.
So look, it's early. We've always said before we launched, we had as much data as we possibly could, being first to the space without an ICD-10 code and a lot of real granular information, since everything is was treated with generic blood pressure lowering medicines and those kind of things. It was hard to really size this perfectly. I still believe that we have sized it correctly, and certainly we monitor everything during a launch. We're very close to every single measurement, and so we have certain triggers that if it makes sense and it's going to be optimizing our sales force would be to increase it, then we would consider that, absolutely. We're just, once again, when you have a product in accelerated approval, the FDA requires that your promotional campaigns are submitted and reviewed prior to your use. And we're very, very excited that we're just launching an actual promotional campaign, which means, the branding and everything right now. This is just going out now. So we're excited to see the impact of that. And once again, it's 9 weeks of Salesforce calling on physicians so far. So we're, it's too early to really give definitive answers on anything like that.
Okay, thank you very much. And just one follow-up question is, did you mentioned in the slide you see that the acceleration after Q1, do you continue to see that now in May as well?
I think that was to date, so once again, we're pleased. We're just trying to give you the trends since the end of the quarter because it was early. So I think that covered from the quarter to today.
Thank you. If I may, one last question. Did any of the patients that have been given the drug stop the treatment?
I'm not sure that we even have that kind of it's so early, I'm not sure that we've actually seen that at all. But I don't think, not as far as I'm aware, actually. I can go and dig into that, but I don't think that we've gotten to the point yet where that would actually kind of be the case.
Okay. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And we have one more question from the line of Johan Unerus from Redeye. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my questions, and congratulations. A good start, and also sensible to not provide a guide at this stage, perhaps, than after Q2. Interesting then with the clarification on the patient profile, it seems to be rather open. Is there any indication that it's been used, how to put it, surprisingly preventive at this stage, or is it too early?
Preventative. So I think that, obviously in terms of the trial that we ran, this was really for patients that are considered to be at risk, and that would kind of follow the, inclusion-exclusion criteria of the trial. And so obviously that is the kind of patient population that is the basis of the approval and the discussion. So I think that, it's really within that kind of patient population. And so I think all of those patients would probably be deemed, per definition, to be at risk.
Yeah. And given the early take-up, the prescriber seems to be rather proactive.
Yeah. I think we're delighted by the fact that, this is, as Andy just mentioned, it is a broad kind of prescriber base, if we can say that, this early kind of in the process. And so it does kind of talk to, the rate of adoption here, which I think is, very encouraging.
It's clearly a lot to do about covering commercial part of the market. I think you alluded to 65-70% of the patient population is likely to be from the commercial side, and you have already made good progress. What to expect towards the end of the year or mid-year in terms of covering commercial life?
So, Andy, I don't know if you want to take that, but I think it's difficult to judge. But go ahead, Andy.
No, it's difficult to judge. This is typical, and what's typical is 6 to 9 months post, approval and launch to see the majority of them make their P&T decision. So we're pleased with the speed at some of the larger plans, and I think that we're on target for that timeline to have most of the decisions made for coverage. But once again, I think it's real important to understand that just because they haven't made a decision yet doesn't mean that a patient does not have access. There is a medical exception process, and patients with plans that haven't made final decisions yet are still eligible and able to get the product.
Excellent. And finally, sort of more of a technical point, when do you actually record the sales?
Okay. Yes, we are recording the sales when the ownership is transferred to a specialty pharmacy.
Excellent. Thank you for taking my questions.
Thanks.
And as there are no further questions, I'll hand it back to the speakers.
So thank you very much to everybody who tuned into this Q1 presentation from Calliditas Therapeutics, and we look forward to presenting the Q2 numbers to you in August of this year. Thank you very much.